All right, family. So I just wanted to come on here and just testify today. I don't really have I have a topic planned to talk about. I don't really have any scriptures already chosen to talk to you about, or anything planned or anything written. I'm just gonna talk to you honestly and just testify to you about what God has done for me in my life, for real. And this video is truly just gonna be about how He has healed my emotions and given me self-control over my own emotions, my own anger, and it's something that I never thought I would find in my life. Like when I say something I never thought I would find in my life, it's something I thought I would never find in my life. And so here I go. I'm going to give you my testimony. I'm in my gym. I'm sorry if you might be sensitive to wife beaters and seeing somebody's skin. This is my skin, and so here I am. And so let me go ahead and get started for you. And so basically, let me just give you a little background when it comes to me and my emotions, okay? And so when I was 15 years old, I had a brain bleed. And when I had a brain bleed, I had this brain bleed on my frontal lobe. And so your frontal lobe is your emotion center. It's where you find your control for your emotions, and it's your emotion center. And so when I was young, I had some real damage to my emotion center, my mind. I had a damaged emotion center, okay? Now the reality is this though, I could have let that be my excuse the rest of my life, and no one could have said nothing to me, for real. Like no one could have said anything to me. I could have just said it's my excuse. You know, I had this, and I also went on to have some concussion issues, and so I could have just kept saying, just let it be my excuse. Like, this is my excuse. This is why I can't control my emotions. This is why, and you just have to deal with it. But that just that's not good enough for me. It wasn't good enough for me, and I was becoming a victim to these things that I felt like that I was made to conquer in my life. I was becoming a victim to things I was made to conquer in my life. And so, like I said, I had a real issue with emotions. And so from that situation, I became incredibly sensitive. Now, I was already a kind of a pure person, kind of sensitive already to life a little bit, but I was very, 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 very sensitive, for real, after I had that brain bleed, and like to a point where I couldn't control my emotions at all. Like when I say at all, like literally, I remember when I first came back to school after having that brain bleed, I was sitting in the classroom and my teacher gave me a test. And I looked at this test for about 2 minutes. I just looked at it, and I just burst out. I just was like, slammed my hands, got up, ran out the classroom, went to the bathroom. I locked the door. I didn't let anybody in the bathroom. I wouldn't let the teacher in the bathroom. I wouldn't let the principal in the bathroom. I wouldn't let nobody in the bathroom. I said, no, I'll talk to my mom. I don't want to talk to y'all, for real. And so I was incredibly sensitive. Like when I say incredibly sensitive, I can't even harp on how sensitive I was. I'll give you a couple more stories before I tell you about the healing that God really gave me and how He healed me for my emotions. But I was incredibly sensitive, for real. Like when I say incredibly sensitive, I was incredibly sensitive. I ended up going out. Something I guess I could see it best also in my relationships. And so in my relationships that I had, I was incredibly sensitive. Like incredibly sensitive. Like I was really somebody that I look back and I understand why people had to act and seem like they were perfect around me, because I was incredibly sensitive. Like incredibly sensitive. Like if you did something wrong, like I was incredibly hurt all the time. Like, it was very easy for me to get angry. And I feel like I was righteous in all of it. And that's the thing, is that most of us think we're righteous in our emotions and our angers and things like that in this life. But it's really not true. It's really not true. And so I can think of a situation where when I was with this football team at IU, and after I started dealing with this last concussions, I got in 2 fights after that. When I say 2 fights, I got in 2 fights. One in the locker room because a guy was playing around and he just happened to shove me a little bit extra. And when he shoved me a little bit extra, it made me so angry, and I just felt like I had to do something right away, and I pushed him into the locker. And I remember I bust his lip. And then another time I was at a bowling alley, and this is the thing, that sometimes these people aren't even meaning to do things. They're not even meaning to do things in a hateful manner, but how sensitive I was so sensitive. Like, I can't even harp on this. Like, my friend literally hit my hat off my head, and I turned around and I hit him in his mouth for real. Because I was like, bro, like, don't touch me. And I was just that sensitive where I couldn't even have a perception to see how someone could be doing something in a light manner or a good manner or anyway. Like, if it hit a string or a chord in my heart that felt wrong, like, I was going to be angry and I was going to go off, or I was going to fight you, or whatever it was. But you know, this really got really, really bad in my life. Like, when I say it got really, really bad in my life, like, my inability to control my anger and control my emotions got really, really bad in my life. I remember one time my mom came down to help me out once I had moved out of college. She came to help me out just to move my stuff into this apartment. And at that time, like I said, I was just so sensitive, and I was hanging on to everything that I feel like anybody ever did me wrong. If I feel like I had anything against you in my life, I was not letting it go. And that included everybody. It included my parents, it included my friends, it included my family. It did not matter for real. And so, like, my mom was somebody that, like, you know, I really deeply regretted how I treated her and my sensitivity. And like, when I was really just going deeper and deeper and deeper into my emotions, and I deeply regret it. And it's crazy because I really felt like I was just. Like, I really felt like, damn, you've been holding this in for so long. It's time that she knows how wrong and how hurt you are. It's time that she knows it. Something was really talking to me like that. Like, something was really talking to me like that. Like, nah, she needs to know. You need to let her know. She needs to feel every last bit of pain that you ever felt. Let her know how much hurt. She just walked around acting like nothing ever happened. You need to let her know how bad it's hurt you. And so I'll never forget, my mom came and helped me out, and helped me move stuff, and I started talking to her honestly just about how I felt about a lot of things in my childhood and a lot of things like that. And I remember my mom saying one thing to me, and she was like, I just don't understand what happened to this child that we all gave our lives to for the betterment of my peace and to love me and my joy. And you know, and I remember snapping. Like, so, I used to have this chord in my heart. When I say I had a chord in my heart that if I heard the wrong words, it just hit this sensitivity. It was like ding, and it was a whole different person would come out for real. And so she said this to me. She said, I just don't know what happened to this baby, this child that we all loved and we all took care of. We all gave our lives to making sure that it was your life was best and all these other things. And it just struck a chord in my heart. And I'm like, well, that's the issue, is that you only loved me when I was a baby, and then when I grow older, y'all don't love me no more. Now, little did I know that was the devil talking to me. That wasn't God, for real. But I ended up going off on my mom and stuff like that. And I'll never forget this. I'll never forget my mom leaving my apartment in the middle of the night and driving home crying back to Kentucky from Bloomington, Indiana, the same night because I went off on her. And so I'm being honest. I mean, we're doing a testimony. I'm going to be honest and tell you truly about how bad my emotions truly were. Like, how, like, dangerous of a person I really was for real. And it's the thing is that, like, I was a person that was, like, I inclined towards trying to love people. I inclined towards doing right by people. I was extremely hurt. I was extremely hurt when I did not receive the love I felt like I was deserved to give. And so I'll give you another example in my life, like when it came to my dad. And this is the thing, is that these people are the people I love the most. And the reality is the people you love the most are people you're going to see the most, the trueness of your love for real. When it came to Adam and Eve, who was his greatest test? Who showed him his love? It was Eve, the person closest to him. And so, you know, in this situation, I had my mom, and so now I'm talking about my dad. So, like, my dad, you know, me and my dad had kind of natural bouts of, you know, just a father and a son and two fleshly beings around each other. Like, you know, there are going to be disputes, there are going to be different things that go on. But, you know, I just had these things in my heart when it came to my dad, because, well, you know, I just had a lot of hurt when it came to my parents, period. Like, when I say my parents, period, you know, my mom had moved from Indiana when I was 12. I only lived with my dad after I was 12, but then I experienced several times with my dad, just like where, you know, I couldn't even live in his house. Like, you know, like, you gotta go live with your mom, or, you know, I would go and, you know, and this last time I would say it wasn't because of him, it was because of me. I wanted to go live with my friends and stuff like that. But I had situations where I just kind of lived in his house, and like me and my dad just would get into it and different things. And I was extremely hurt by how I felt like my dad had treated me in my life. Like, I was extremely hurt by it. Because I'm like, bro, all I care about is that my dad is happy. All I care about is that my dad is joyful. All I care about is my dad has peace. And it's like, I can't do anything good enough for this man. I can't do anything good enough. And when I say that, just extremely hurt me to the point where I honestly didn't even actively try to talk to my dad for years when I was in college. And then when I left college, I remember like I would not go home to my dad's house. I would rather sleep outside. I slept outside of my ex-girlfriend's house before I went to my dad's home. Which is a whole nother story about my emotions and anger, and I'm gonna get into that in a second. But my emotions, man, were controlling me, and like controlling me to my death, for real. And like were killing my perception, had me thinking that my parents didn't love me, had me thinking that I had no friends that loved me, had me thinking that I had no family that loved me. Like my emotions and it was killing me. Like when I was saying it was killing me. I remember texting my dad at one point in time and just being locked in on just texting him. And I just want to let him know all the hurt. But it's crazy because my intent was letting him know the hurt so that he could be just as hurt as I was. And that's evil, for real. But I really thought I was righteous in doing that. Like, oh, he needs to feel my pain. He needs to understand how bad I really am hurt. But that's evil. And so, that's how my emotions were leaving my parents. I'm being very honest with you, because I really want whoever, if you're going through these things in your life, I'm being honest with you because I want you to be healed also. I found my healing in Christ. I really did. I want you to find the healing too. And so something else that happened was my relationships. Okay, so my intimate relationships, and I'm not gonna go into detail about the people and stuff like that because that's their testimony to give. They're just parts in my testimony. But so my ex, I had an ex, right, that I was with for years. Like when I say years, I was with for years. And when I got out of college, I was working and I was running a group training facility on the west side of Indianapolis. And it would get to a point at a certain time at night. Like at this time, I was not going to my dad's house because the grudge I had against my dad, for real. And so I was refusing to stay at my dad's house. My mom was in Kentucky. I don't really have any family in Indianapolis besides my grandparents, and my grandparents live in Alvey on the other side of town. I didn't have any money really. Like I didn't have money to put $5-10 in my gas tank. Like I need to stay somewhere on the west side near that gym was the only way I was gonna be able to go back and forth and work like I was supposed to. And so I was with this girl for years. When I say years, I knew her family for years. I would be at her house like every weekend, all the time, like for years, since I was like 15, not 15, but 16, 17 years old, all the way until I was 21, 20 years old. That's a long time, right? And so one day though, I was at her house, and when I was at her house, and I'm just telling you these stories, I'm just telling you how all these things really built up inside of me and made me this terrible, terrible, terrible person, for real. Like, terrible person. But I'm also going to tell you my healing I found in Christ. So, basically, I went to this situation, and I've been with this girl for years, and I was leaving that gym, and it was too late for me to go to my friend's house. My friend Jason and James, I used to stay at their house all the time, right? And so it got to the point where it was too late for me to go to this house because they were all asleep. I couldn't find anybody that was awake, and I was leaving her house, and I went and drove, and I was trying to find somebody, one of my friends that's awake, to stay at their house. Couldn't find anybody, so I ended up hitting her up and saying, hey, can I stay in the house? And she's like, no, like she didn't want to ask her parents, and because she was scared they were gonna say no, and I was, really, really hurt by this, right? And what ends up happening is I end up pulling back up to her house, and she brings me a pillow and blanket outside, and I sleep in my car all night, okay? Now at this point, as I keep talking to you, I'm trying to tell you that if you had to imagine who I was and with my emotions and being traumatized, I was like a dog that lived in a cave that literally, if you looked at him and flashed a light on him, I was probably sitting there just growling to myself and just hurt, and like literally, if you touch me, I'm gonna bite you, because I just did not trust nobody. Like when I say I got to the point of trusting nobody, I trusted nobody. I was biting the hand of people that would feed me. I was biting the hand of people that were coming against me. It didn't matter who it was. I was going to bite your hand because I did not trust you at this point. Like my feelings and my heart was sick. Like when I say I was sick, I was sick. But this situation was like, made me even more sick in my life. I'm not gonna lie to you, because like I had a lot of love for this family, I had a lot of love for this girl, and like, you know, them having me sleep outside, and then like as they woke up, they were coming outside and they saw me out there sleeping. Ain't nobody say nothing to me. Like literally, it was like that hurt me inside. Like when I say it hurt me, it really hurt me for real. And so that led to later to me and her breakup, right? And me and her breakup, really, I'm trying to tell you, my full display of my inability to control my emotions. That was the first time not the first time, but that's when I really started to realize how bad I was with my emotions for real. How much non-control I really had over my own life, and like just how I was being ravaged by my own emotions. And so like during this time, when I tell you like my emotions was, I had a grudge that was so heavy that I could not even look this girl in the eyes. Every time I looked at her, I had to make sure that she, like, I wanted her to feel my pain. I wanted her to feel my pain so bad. I'm like, nah, bro, like, I'm not gonna treat you with no love. Like, I'm not gonna act like I care about nothing. Like, and the thing is I did care. It's just that I did not understand love. I didn't understand emotions. I didn't understand. I was in the dark. I was blind. When I say I was blind, I was so blind. But I was just willingly, I was hurting this girl, and I really thought I was righteous in what I was doing. And like, you know, I was really hurting this girl. I was angry. I was anxious. Like I said, I was a beat up dog for real. Like I was not, I didn't trust nobody. I didn't trust nobody. And so, you know, my full display of my anger and things come out in that situation. Like I remember, you know, her family pulling up, and you know, I remember getting her brother's face, and like, you know, if you're gonna do something, do something. I'm like, you ain't gonna do nothing exactly. Like, you know, I was in his face, and it didn't matter who it was. Like I was prepared. Like I'm trying to tell you, when I was like a beat dog, and my mind was tormented and hurt, like it was hurt. Like I'm trying to tell you, like I was bolting the inside of my door, and I had a club sitting on the inside of my door. If somebody comes in this house, is not supposed to be here, they're going to get whacked with this club for real. And so, bro, I was traumatized. I was hurt. Like my emotions were all over the place. I was the angriest man in the world. When I say the angriest man in the world, I was the angriest man in the world. The angriest man in the world. When I say the angriest man in the world. And I had no control over my emotions. And so basically, I went through this whole situation trying to find control for my emotions. And so, you know what I did was this. I ended up moving down to Texas. So after, so fast forward, my son's mom ends up getting pregnant at that time, right? And so I used that as a way to go, and I was gonna go take care of her. But at the same time, I was like, I can use this time in my life to work on myself and work on my emotions and get myself together for real. And so I went down there, and this was my first attempt at getting myself together. When I say I had like 3 stages of rehab with my emotions, I did, okay? The first one was I tried to do it on my own, okay? And when I tried to do it on my own, it didn't work. It worked temporarily in my little safe environment, as long as I wasn't around people, as long as I wasn't indulged in social media, or if I wasn't indulged, it worked temporarily. If I isolated myself enough in Texas, it worked for me in my little zone, right? But the reality is that you gotta live life. And so I started to get myself together a little bit. And at this time, I'm trying to tell you, my emotions, my anxiety was so bad that like I was becoming so unhealthy. Like I was somebody that always weighed around 210 to 215. Before I went down to Texas, I went down to weighing like 175 pounds. I lost 40 pounds in 1 year, all because I was so indulged in my emotions, and like, it was killing me. When I say it was killing me inside. And so I go down there, I try to get myself together. I start to gain a little bit more weight. I start forcing myself to eat. I had to force myself to eat. Like I'm trying to tell you, like, and people who have dealt with their emotions and the sickness of that inside for real, it just gets to a point where you just stop taking care of yourself. You're just so indulged in your emotions. You just think you gotta take care of your emotions. You're so inside of yourself that you forget you neglect yourself physically. I had to start forcing myself to eat. Like literally, when I would force myself to eat, I would throw up almost every morning, just forcing myself to eat for real, because I just could not make myself eat. And like I said, my emotions were terrible, but I ended up getting it together. But then this one will really let me know that my mind still was not right. And I'm telling you the honest to God truth right now. When I got in the car to go back to Indianapolis, we drove, right? I got in the car. I'm in the car for 5 minutes. And 5 minutes later, I literally, how do I say this in the most light way for everybody? I boo-boo, I diarrhea all over myself. Like literally because my stomach started feeling anxious about this ride. And then like, I just started using the restroom on myself. I got so sick. Like when I say I got so sick on that ride, I got so sick to where there was nothing that could help me. Like there was nothing, and like I was in my bed, I had cold chills. I'm in my bed having cold chills. I'm throwing up. Like at this time too, I had like the worst hemorrhage situation going on. So I was bleeding really bad. My life was falling apart. Like when I say my life was falling apart, and it's all because of my own darkness and toxicness inside of myself for real. My life was falling apart. And there was nothing it was getting to the point where nothing could help me. At that time in my life, I really believed that like weed and marijuana was going to help me with my anxiety and stuff. Nothing. When I say nothing, it didn't matter what I did. It didn't matter what I did. I could have took some prescribed anxiety medication. I could have smoked. I could have went and worked out. It didn't matter what it wasn't helping me for real. Like I felt sick like a zombie inside. Have you ever seen SpongeBob? Like he had the suds. I looked like I had the suds from how I was feeling inside. And so I get back to Indianapolis, and for a little while, like I'm keeping my emotions kind of down. I'm keeping them kind of good, but I knew I wasn't healed yet. But I ended up going through this situation with my son's mom. We had a situation going on, and amongst other things, I had to deal with some lying in that relationship. But like I told you, I was a beaten dog. Like when I say I was a beaten dog, like I was in the corner somewhere just shaking and like that. That's who I was inside for real. Like, and so I was dealing with that, and I started dealing with her, and I started seeing this little lying pattern and stuff like that. And I go back to my beaten dog ways. I'm emotional. I'm anxious. Like I'm running away from her at this point. And I'm like, no, there's no peace here. You're the person I need to isolate myself from. And so I'm just isolating myself. I'm walking myself into dark situations. Like I'm killing myself inside from my own emotions. But at this point in time, so we start going to premarital counseling. I'm about to end up wrapping this up and starting. This is when Jesus comes into my life and starts helping me out, okay? We go to premarital counseling, okay? We're in premarital counseling, and, they're talking to us, and they're counseling us and stuff like that. And this is actually a family I really love, Yvette and John. I really love them. Like, they're really... if they're not my official godparents, they know they are godparents to me for real. That's just who they are in my life. But they were doing a marriage counseling for us, right? On the last session, let me give you a little bit of backdrop about before I even say what's about to happen, okay? I got to the point with my anger and my anxiety where I started telling my son's mom, I said, bro, there's something inside of me, and I started to name it. I started to name what was inside of me, and I started calling it sword. I said, bro, there is like this beast inside of me, and I named it sword. I was like, bro, there's this beast inside of me, bro, that if you hit this chord, like there's this beast that's gonna come out of me, and I don't even know what's gonna happen to you for real. And I pray that I never get in a fight, because I don't know if I'm going to be able to stop until I kill that person for real. Like, I really had something really seriously going on with me, for real. When I say serious, like very seriously going on with me. And so, basically, we went to this marriage counseling the last time. When we went to marriage counseling this last time, like, I was in there, and I started hearing, like, this, I'm hearing, I just feel like she wasn't being honest. I feel like this blame was in this situation, and I got so angry when I'm just getting up, I'm pacing back and forth, like, and I was a person that before then, like, it's funny because before that, I had a very bad 2-year stretch with my emotions, right? Before those 2 years, I never really had instances of like outbursts of anger and stuff like that, but I had 2 years straight of just outbursts of anger. I'm just letting it out on everybody, right? So I'm going off. I'm going off. I'm like, I'm tired of this. I'm tired of lying. I'm tired of the blaming. I'm tired of y'all. Yvette and John, this is BS. Y'all ain't helping us, blah, blah, blah. All this other stuff. I'm going off. I'm like, bro, I'm ready to go. Give me my son. My son was in there. He was in the car seat. I said, nah, give me my son. We can leave. Mother, you can find another way home for real. I couldn't even be in the same car as her for real. I was so angry. When I say I was so angry, I was so angry. But then I decided to go to anxiety therapy, okay? So after I get done with that, I really start reflecting on myself and I really see what happened and stuff like that. And I start understanding, like, you know, although I've been joking about, you know, there's something inside of me and like, you know, this anger and my emotions and like I'm just so sensitive and it was all a running joke and some things like that. But it wasn't funny to me no more. Like, I'm like, no, I need help for real. And so I went to anxiety therapy, and when I went to anxiety therapy, she told me that I want you to start, whenever you have these negative trainings of emotions and these negative thoughts, I want you to start closing your eyes and thinking about what you have 1,000% faith in, right? And so I started thinking about that. I'm like, well, it's not a person. It's not nothing, no physical thing in this world. It's God. And so I got in a situation where my son's mom ended up lying to me again. And when she lied to me, I just closed my eyes and I just breathed. And I just said, it's all good. And after I said it's all good, I went and sat down on the couch. I'm like, it's all good. And she said, she's like, what do you mean it's all good? I'm like, either I'm gonna love you or I'm not. It's all good. And I don't even know where that came from. When I said I have no idea where it came from, I just closed my eyes, thought about God, and then what flowed from my mouth was, it's all good. I went and sat down, and I feel like, and I had peace. And I was like, and she comes up to me, she comes to me crying, and she's like, are you sure it's all good? Like, are you okay? Like, cause she thought, okay, no. If he's this silent in what I've seen in the past, it's a whole nother level of anger going on right now. But it wasn't. It really wasn't. It was a whole nother level of peace that she's never seen inside of me. And it was crazy because she was crying because she was thankful about this, right? And so I ended up going back to anxiety therapy, and I'm not going to get into the story of me dying and stuff. If you want to check that out, I would go back to my first testimony video. You can hear more about that. But I ended up telling her the story about me dying, and but I ended up having this was my last real long emotional bout in my life. My last real one. I told her a story about dying, right? As I told her the story about dying, I went to the situation where I was just crying and crying and crying and crying. And I cried for like 3 days straight because I just didn't understand what was going on in my life. Because, you know, I had just seen a lot when I died, and I was just incredibly sensitive to life. I didn't want to look outside. I didn't want to look at water. I didn't want to look at the sun. I didn't want to do anything for real. And so I was just crying for like 3 days straight. And I was somebody that was very emotional, but I wasn't somebody that cried. I wasn't someone that cried like that for real. But basically, I just started feeling this emotion build up inside of me, and I was just crying and crying and crying and crying like 3 days straight. As soon as my eyes opened, I was crying. I couldn't even go to work because I'm like, I'm just gonna cry for real the whole time in there. But I come home one day and I hit the ground, and I faint. I literally faint and hit the ground. I've been crying for 3 days straight, and my eyes were blurry. And my eyes hit the ground, and I end up having this experience where it felt like 1,000. And I really didn't plan on talking this nothing spiritual, but I'm gonna tell you this story. I ended up hitting the ground, and I feel like I had a 1,000-pound man sitting on my back. And it was almost like, if you looked at me, it looked like I was having a seizure on the ground for it. My head was shaking, it was hitting the ground, and I could not get up. And out of nowhere just comes flowing out my mouth and my nose, this snot and this water all over the ground. So I was on the ground for like 5 minutes. It felt like 50 minutes. I get up and I go in the bathroom, and I'm talking to my son's mom, and I'm like, you know, she's in the bathroom crying. And I'm like, what's wrong? And she's like, your mom told me 6 months ago you were gonna be delivered from something that's gonna come out of your nose. And so I was just like, what? Like, my mom never said that to me. And like, I'm like, are you sure she told you this? Like, you're telling me this now, but like, you ain't never said this to me before, and she never told me this. But you know, I understand everything's in God's time and God's plan. There's a reason why she never told me that, for real. And so I had that experience, and some other things happened from that experience, but that experience made me want to dive deeper into God's word, okay? So I dived deeper into God's word, and it was crazy because I had been crying for 3 days straight, but out of nowhere, I just wasn't crying no more. And I started diving deeper into God's word, and I started figuring out that Jesus told the truth. He told me everything I saw when I died. He explained it for me. So I dive deeper with Jesus, right? But at this point, I start deciding, well, obviously, God is my answer. God is my answer. And Jesus, obviously, he is the answer that is the bridge to God. I can see that. Clearly, I can see that. And so I dive deeper into Christ. I let go. I truly, when I say I truly, I let go of all knowledge, all wisdom, all understanding, everything I thought I knew before I read what Jesus said at that time. I just let it all go. Everything I thought I believed, everything that I thought I was right in, everything I thought I was wrong in, I just let it all go and say, I don't know nothing. I don't know anything. Lord, teach me for real. And so he teaches me. And so I'm going to start teaching. I'm going to tell you the things that he taught me that healed me with my emotions for real, okay? The first thing he taught me, and this is the thing, this is harsh, but this is the thing, if you can't accept these things, you ain't going to find your healing. So one of the first things he taught me was in Matthew 4. And he started showing me how Jesus was led into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil, right? But he's tempted by the devil, and I started realizing the devil wasn't outside of him. The devil was in his thoughts. And so then I started realizing that, and I started realizing how Jesus clinging to God's word to go against everything the devil was saying to him. But this was not an exterior conversation. It was an interior conversation. And so I started realizing all my thoughts aren't me and they're not God. That was my first lesson. And so I started realizing that all these thoughts that are me and all these thoughts that I thought were me the whole time, they were leading me to this anger and all these different things. It wasn't God. I may have thought it was God. I may have thought I was God-led. I may have thought that I was this believer and stuff like that, but it wasn't. It wasn't God that was doing that in my life. And so that was my first lesson. The second lesson he teaches me is in Matthew 5. He talks about this. He says, he says the angels were told, do not commit murder. But I say to you that anyone who is angry with his brother is in danger of the fires of hell. I was like, hold on. So you're telling me that just as bad as murder is anger also. And so I started realizing it don't matter what happens in my life. I'm never righteous in being angry. Never. You're never righteous in being angry. I'm sorry. I don't know if you really thought that in your life. You're never righteous in being angry. You're not. One of the things it says about love, it says love is not irritable. And so you're never righteous in being angry, right? And so I started learning that, and I started learning about how he just really talks about how the spiritual side, like you may think that murder is so bad, but he's letting you understand it starts in your heart with your anger. And so that was something that really clicked for me in my life, because I had these bouts of anger. I had literally a demon I named swore in my heart that was literally making me the most angry person in the world. But he started to let me know that this anger wasn't actually helping me out of my life. He started letting me know this anger, I was not righteous in my anger in my life. I wasn't. I really wasn't. And so the next thing that he kind of taught me was this, and I can't remember if this was in Matthew 7, at the end of Matthew 7, I believe. But he says that he said, every man that hears my word and puts them into action is like a house built on bedrock. And so when the storms and torrents come, it'll bang against the house. But he says if you put them into action, you will stand tall, and that house will never collapse. But he says a man who hears my word and does not put them into action is like a house built on sand, and when the winds and torrents come, that house will collapse with a mighty crash. So he starts teaching me about my emotions. He starts telling me why I keep crashing inside, and why I keep burning, and why my life keeps burning down, going downhill over and over and over again. And he's literally telling me, because you keep hearing my words, but you're not putting them into action in your life. And so I started putting his words into action in my life, and I started finding this solid ground in my life where I cannot sink under for real. He started telling me that, no, your focus, he said the two commands that are the base of the law and the prophets are to love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind, and to love your neighbors yourself. And he said that his commandments are life. And so I started realizing that these two things need to be my focus. My love for God and my love for others, my faith and my love. It also says that the word was made flesh and he made his home among us, Jesus Christ. And he was filled with unfailing love and faithfulness. These two commands of love and faith are the two things that Jesus was filled with. And can't nobody tell me that Jesus Christ did not have peace within himself. He was the Prince of Peace. And so I started having my focus and changing my focus in my life, not to the things I see on the outside, but to his commands and his word. And so I started focusing on my love and my faith. But I found this solid ground that even when these emotions started coming in my life, and they started banging against my house, and they started making me feel a certain way, my anger would come, my excitement would come, my passion would come, my sadness would come, these different things would be hitting me in my heart, I could stand tall because I kept my focus on his word and my love and my faith. I didn't turn my focus to my emotions. And so this is the last thing I'm going to tell you that he really taught me, and that really healed me with my own emotions and my ability to have self-control over myself for real. And that was the story that came with Elijah, okay? And so in this story with Elijah, Jezebel is trying to kill prophets at this time, right? As she's trying to kill prophets, Elijah runs and goes to a mountaintop. When he goes to this mountaintop, the Lord asks him, why are you here? And the Lord knows why, but he's trying to get him to be honest with himself, right? He's like, why are you here? Why are you here? But long story short, what ends up happening is this. As he's at this mountaintop, there's fire blazes around him. But it says that God was not in the fire. And then it says a storm came, but God wasn't in the storm. It said an earthquake happened, but he wasn't in the earthquake. But it says after all these things, the soft voice of the Lord spoke to Elijah. That woke me up in my life. Because I started realizing that these storms in our lives, and this kind of goes hand in hand with my last thing. These storms in our lives are emotions. As they come and go, and they're so temporary. They blaze at you. Your anger will blaze at you. Your trauma will make a crack in your ground around you and shake you up. But the thing is that the God is not in your emotions. And that's something I had to realize about my life, is that my emotions are not God-led. That's not God. My emotions are not God. His word is not my emotions. His word does not spark up because of physical circumstances. It stays the same consistent soft voice all the time. And so for real, I had to realize that I had to be patient with myself and my emotions. Yes, anger might blaze, but he's not in the anger. I can't go off of that fire. I'm gonna run to my own death. Yes, a storm might come, but he's not in the storm. If I'm running around with my head cut off because of the storm, I'm gonna run to my own death. Yes, an earthquake can come, but he is not in the earthquake. He's not in those things. He is the voice after that talks you in peace. And so I learned that, but then also it coincides with this is Jesus. And so Jesus in the boat, and these people are frantic. They're frantic. They're terrified. They're scared. There's a storm going on, right? And as this storm is going on, Jesus looks at them and he says, why do you fear? Why do you doubt? Why do you have little faith? And so what does he do? He rebukes the storm, and the storm must obey him. And so this is why I started realizing your emotions have to obey Jesus' words. There is nothing in creation that is not subject to obedience to Christ. Even your emotions in your heart has to be obedient to him. And so I started realizing that just as Christ spoke to the enemy with God's word, that's also how we have to speak to our own emotions in our own heart. We have to speak to them and use God's word and truth to bring us to peace and find our tranquility. It says that their passion is rottenness to the bones, but a tranquil heart is life to the body. And so the passion and the fire and these things that go up and down, these climaxes, those are not God. God keeps you tranquil in your life. And so, fam, I just really want to come on here today and just testify a little bit about the healing I found with my own emotions in my life. I really don't think y'all understand that this angry person I was, this person of this terrible perception. I have this negative perception of everything, and like I just want to tell you guys about the healing that is in Christ when it comes to your feelings, when it comes to anxiety, when it comes to depression, when it comes to all these things in your life. He has the answers. He has the answers. I want you to understand that God made you. You may think that you're different, but we all are flesh with a heart and a soul. Cars all look different on the outside, but they all have an engine. And you have to understand that only He can help you learn how to properly use what God made you to be. How to properly keep your temple working at perfect use, a perfect peace, a perfect joy. He has that for you. It's funny because the one thing He said that just hit my heart so hard, and He said, do not be troubled or afraid, because the peace I give cannot be found in this world. The peace He gives cannot be found in this world. I'm sorry, but there's nothing physical in this world that can do it for you. Not a person, not a substance, not a physical food. Nothing in this world is going to give you that peace but Him. And so, for real, you may see me, you may hear me, and you heard me be this huge advocate of peace in people's lives, because He taught me true peace, and I would never let it go, for real. And I started to understand, He says this, the Lord sends distress on men because they've sinned against the Lord. And I'm trying to tell you what you have to do. You have to turn your heart to His commands and His love, love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind, and love your neighbors yourself. And I'm trying to tell you that there is no room for this controlling of emotions if you're allowing God to control you. You have two options. You're going to let God control you, or you're going to let your emotions control you. It says in this Bible that even when our heart condemns us, God is greater than our heart. He's greater than our feelings. And so I don't think y'all understand that even when your heart thinks that you're wrong or all these things, your heart doesn't know what right and wrong is. It's not leading you correctly. Only God can lead you correctly in your life. And so I hope that this blesses somebody in their life, and they can come to understand that they're not alone and not being able to control their emotions, but there also is healing from it. You don't have to be a victim to it your whole life. You don't have to stay that sensitive person that everybody can get to you in your emotions, where everybody controls you. You can find self-control for yourself. And so I really hope this video blesses somebody. I hope that you can find some healing for your own emotions in your life. I hope you can find the peace that Christ has for you. And have a blessed day.